at South by Southwest, the very first panel at South by Southwest 2026. First, a big shout out to South by, who partnered with us again, has been a terrific partner with us here in Austin, Texas, and essential to our growth as a company. I'm also an author of a book called Set Your Table. You'll hear about that later. This is an author's panel just to have a conversation that authors don't usually get to have. We are often in the middle of people and doing a pitch. And we all know what this feels like. You meet somebody, of course, your book is your soul, as we'll hear later, and you pitch it to somebody. But you don't get to talk deeply about who you are, what your book's about, and then ask and answer questions from people that you begin to treasure because they like your book. And I have a really, really sincere connection to all these people, even though I've just barely met them other than George. Because authors go through this cathartic process of burying themselves in a vulnerable moment that most people don't realize. And I think it's really powerful. It's partly the reason why it's valuable to our nation. And in this time where we have all this AI and all this slop and all this junk that's out there in noise, part of what we're doing here is find that signal for the noise. And that begins with people who have great ideas. So it's a really easy format today. We're going to start off, we're going to introduce, each of you guys introduce yourself, and then we'll come back to George and we'll talk about the premise of the book. What are you trying to reveal to people? And then maybe something that people don't recognize that's in the book, an Easter egg.
I'm George Doherty. I have a kind of an interesting background. 30 years or so of military experience. I was the second highest ranking military officer in Air Force Science and Technology. Co-wrote the Air Force's current science and technology strategy that dictates all the future tech directions for the Air Force and the Space Force. But also, as a reservist, I have a parallel civilian career for 2 international management consulting companies helping high-tech and life sciences companies deal with dramatic strategic change facing their companies and their industries. So that's the background that led me to write this book, because a long time ago I saw the dissonance between the level of anxiety and paranoia, if you will. As Andy Grove liked to say, in business only the paranoid survive, especially in tech. And so we would oftentimes have, my consulting teams would be working 80 hours a week, eating vending machine food at corporate headquarters to try to stay sustained, to help CEOs and other C-suite executives deal with what you might think of as relatively simple strategic challenges compared to what the Department of Defense and the military is facing with the rise of robotics and AI and the absolute tsunami of change that's coming at them, right? And so in the time since then, I think we've just seen that start to take hold. So that's the motivation for the book, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it when we come back.
Hey everyone, my name is Jan Rosen. I have about 30 years experience in the software industry. I've started out as an engineer and then went into leadership roles. I spearheaded PayPal's initiative to become a payment method in store, and that was back in 2012, so we were early. And we learned a lot about adoption and failure and being early. Then later I led Venmo's initiative to become profitable. And I always worked with my co-author, CEO Christoph Kolb, as being a client to their services initially around software consultancy. And now I'm working with Christoph, and what we saw 2024 was when AI started to enter the space and agentic AI started to enter the space, and in essence when AI actually can pursue goals and take decisions, we started to think about how is that going to impact society and how it's going to impact work, right? And primarily it is going to disrupt the software industry, so that was the seed to write the book we wrote, to help people understand that impact and help them position themselves. So I'm going to leave to Christoph to give some more flavor to it, but I'm honored to be here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Scott Simon. I wrote a book called Scare Your Soul, and it happened in the strangest of ways. I was CEO of a real estate company, and I chose to sing in front of the busiest restaurant in my city to overcome a fear of singing. I know someone else in the audience did the exact same thing. We connected this morning. It's funny that we all are connected in these small and interesting ways. All we have to do is connect with one another, and we find those interconnections. It was the most terrifying and liberating experience probably of my life, and I came home and I wrote a Facebook post about it that went viral and completely changed my life. I had people from around the world sending me messages, how do I be more courageous? What does this mean? How can I do this? And I said, I don't have a damn clue, but let's figure this out together. And it led to forming a courage movement called Scare Your Soul, which does nothing more than give people permission slips to be more courageous in their lives. And a publisher one day reached out to me, sent me an email, asking me to write a book about courage in a time of fear. And I thought it was spam, so I deleted the email. Because what publisher in Manhattan sends an email to a guy in Cleveland who had just created a courage movement? But I pulled it out of my trash folder, responded, and it turned into a book that has changed my life.
Love it.
That's a great story.
Hi, I am Katie. I come from a musical theater background, so I have no qualms about singing in public.
We'll do a duet later.
We'll do a duet, maybe over. There's a restaurant downstairs.
Let's do it.
Oh, perfect.
Why wait?
Well, we're not warmed up yet.
Yeah.
I've spent the last 20 years researching, writing about, thinking about, speaking about, generally obsessing over self-talk, the inner narrative that we've got going on 24/7, that whether we realize it or not, informs how we walk through the world. I came to this work while I was in musical theater and struggled with a host of mental health and eating disorders, body-related disorders. And I realized that the advice that I was seeing and hearing and getting was, look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself you're amazing. They were these affirmations that were really wonderful, but they didn't really do anything in the long run. And I thought, why is that? How can I move myself forward when I can't look at myself and tell myself, I love myself, I'm amazing? And why is that advice, or the advice of treat yourself like you would treat a best friend, why do so many of us know that logically, but we're not able to implement it to make a difference? And so I got certified as a mindset coach. I have worked with Fortune 500 companies, I've worked with nonprofits, I've worked with individuals for the last almost 2 decades on how do we actually shift our negative self-talk in a real, lasting way. Because in the book, what I discuss, Want Yourself, is that shifting your self-talk is not a nice to have, it is a need to have. It is the puzzle piece that we don't talk about nearly enough when it comes to making the change that we say we want to see in the world. And so this book is the culmination of all of that work.
Thank you, that's terrific. My name's Gregory Stock, and I've written a book called Generation AI and the Transformation of Human Being. And what prompted me to write that is I've come from a background in macroevolutionary biology, I have a PhD in biophysics, and I've looked at the way people are talking about AI, and it's always about what's going to happen to AI, and it's going to be this amazing thing, or it's going to destroy humanity, or how it's going to affect jobs, all this. But it's almost like a Star Trek story where you see people are jumping at warp speeds through the galaxies and such, and yet they're completely unchanged. Somehow we're above that. Well, this is about what the impacts of immersive AI are going to be on us. And Generation AI is the kids that are growing up today that have been born after 2022 or so, and that are going to be interacting with AI agents, with AI personas. They're going to have counselors, teachers, friends, lovers, guides. All of this is going to be completely immersed in the kind of AI things that we're seeing happening today. So it's not something that's going on in the future. this is going to dramatically transform who we are. And what's extraordinary is that nobody is talking about it. It's not, oh, we're going to be extinguished by AI. It's that we are going to be dramatically different. In this world of our kids, where they're not going to learn to write, they're not going to learn a foreign language, it's going to be transformative when you look at the developmental biological things that occur as we grow up. And this is our world too. And we need to start talking about these things. And there are a bunch of questions in here that are things like, you know, what if you had like a perfect AI nanny that was just wonderful with your kids and attentive and interested in them and helped them, so much so that your kids would get more emotionally attached to them than to you. Would you want that? So thinking in very personal terms, and it's not, and there I'll be giving a keynote later about our relationship with death as we begin to not lose people because there are simulations of them that are virtually indistinguishable, and to really inhabit this space and think about what's happening. It is happening fast, and almost everybody is unaware of it, and it's going to blindside society in extraordinary ways and cause a lot of issues. So that is the exploration that I do in that book. Thank you.
We're exploring quite a few common themes, and I'm afraid to say I'm about as old as the current wave of AI research itself. So in fact, I have a background in AI, and so as you can hear from my Northern European accent, when you're the not so cool kid in Germany studying physics, right? And so I was from an early age interested in autonomous machines, right? And what would make them tick? And carbon dating myself just a little bit, I've got a PhD from Caltech in computational neuroscience, so we've got a little bit of an overlap there. My first neural network, in fact, fit onto a floppy disk. It had 3 layers. The first layer, the input layer, the third layer, the output layer, and the middle layer that we called hope, hoping that the thing would actually learn something. That's sort of, and so I've been following, and I've had the implausible privilege of watching the entire AI field grow up. AI at the time was mostly artificial intelligence, was mostly artificial and hardly intelligent, and now it's seemingly can do pretty much anything, right? So just walking across the street, we see a fleet of Waymos, right? And for our industry, that's why Jan, my co-author and collaborator in this field, we call it the Waymo moment for the software services industry. So the question is not can software write itself, right? But would you get into that car? Would you trust the software that it's producing? So a big part of what Cognitive Came, our book, is about how do you form viable partnerships with this artificial intelligence, with agents? How do you integrate them into your workflows, into your business context, into your environment? And I'm very fascinated by your comment about us using AI to enhance our skills. I think they're very beneficial ways of using AI, but I'm also deeply worried that we atrophy our skills, right? And so you've seen this over, we become, I think, we talk about slop, AI slop in our current, in our everyday lives, right? But just imagine, don't think of AI, think about this sort of magic pill you take in the moment before you go to work, and you just become better at writing emails, right? More prolific at doing spreadsheets, analysis, right? And you come home from a day's work of being very productive. Have you actually gotten better at your job? Have you made more money? Have you made your connections? Have you enhanced shareholder value? Have you sold more, right? So there's this productivity illusion that we're also expanding on in the book, and quite a few themes that I'm looking forward to discussing with you guys. So glad to be here.
I walked in. So I'm also an author. So I'm Brian Cook, Colonel retired, U.S. Army. Some great friends in the town. My West Point classmate just walked in. Good to see you, Dave. So Set Your Table is about the challenge that I found in my military career. When you step in the middle of something highly complex, highly consequential, you write great strategy, you write great plans, and you go to execute, and it falls apart. I was there in Afghanistan. We were turning over the security to the Afghans after 11 years of holding it for them and making Afghanistan safe. And when we turned it over, the leader of the UN who came to turn it over was almost killed in his helicopter on the inbound by an Afghan soldier with an RPG. Lucky Major tackled the guy. It was like, how does that happen? There's literally thousands of hours into work in the strategy and the plans that go into our success as a military and this great force we have, in the DoD. So that began an exploration of what the heck is this? I just kept writing in my notebooks. I never thought it would be a book. Let's jump forward. I came here to Austin, Texas after having a suite of challenges in my life. In 2015 and then 3 more times in 2018, I died because my brain was shutting off my heart. The 3rd time in front of that sweet little girl over there, Grace. And the challenge that I saw was like, how do you grab the handle and live life bigger after dying? And unfair to Sarah, I didn't really share it, I just kept writing my book. And then I spent 3.5 more, so the Army kicked me out. Pacemaker's an automatic way to get kicked out of the Army. So I was here working for the 4-star general with a $47 billion a year TAM market share Army Futures Command. And I got called by a JAG officer and said, your career's done. Of course that 4-star wanted me around, so he extended my career a couple of months. So I could write a great plan. But then they kicked me out. And I jumped into what I thought was a second mountain, IBM, and learned great things about Watson and cloud architecture and AI, and even quantum, which just scares the great continuum here with all these people at the table. But what I realized when I came to actually about 2024 was this was just a strategy problem. And strategy scares people as a word, but I'm just telling you it's above your plans. And what I have found is if you find your values, align yourself to your values and your efforts, everywhere you are in your life, you will stop having work-life balance and you'll have work-life integration. And it's an amazing feeling, and you have great people, and as soon as you do it, you start aligning your life to those values, and you feel like you're worthy to be part of this earth. So that's what the book's about. Deceptively simple little metaphor. Set your table. Set your table as a person. Set your table in your relationships. Set your table professionally. And then set your table in your community. Be a ripple maker, which all you guys are and gals, because ripple makers write books, right? That's how you get your message to other people. So that's what the book's about. I'm super jealous of all these who are holding like books, and mine's going to copy editing this weekend. So that's the tension in my book. I think the hustle factories of America and the guru ecosystem that tells you to keep looking in the mirrors and I'm amazing, I'm anti-fragile. I know that's BS. I did that for 30 years and it killed me, literally. It doesn't work. So how do we find that better? And we're all at the helm of having this conversation. So back to you, George. Tell us a little bit more about Beast.
All right. Well, part of the inspiration as well was that when I was sitting in meetings in the Pentagon, in the headquarters of defense laboratories and so forth, I was consistently just disappointed and depressed by how simplistic and not prepared for these discussions anybody was. Even the military officers who were supposedly in charge of these things, nobody understood the history. I was looking for books myself at the time that said, hey, there's got to be some books out there on where we've been with this before. We didn't start yesterday with robotic weapons and AI and things like that. But in terms of the military context, there was hardly anything out there. For instance, almost nobody knows in the military the largest tank battle in history on the Eastern Front in World War II, spearheaded by unmanned robotic ground vehicles, right? Nobody remembers that. What did that tell us? Nobody knows, right? Most people have never even heard of it. And that's just one of the many stories we start Beast in the Machine out with, just trying to recover that lost memory of all that real combat experience and what it tells us. The Battle of Kursk.
Kursk.
Yeah. Yeah, so all the German units actually were the Tiger tank units, which were the spearheads, were not really the spearheads. In front of them went the robotic radio-controlled breaching tank units. And so, it's got a lot of long history, and we should remember it. Because a lot of the same problems that they encountered, the things they learned, are exactly the same things we're learning again, today in places like Ukraine. Right? But The other thing, I came from this from a very humanistic or humane perspective, right? And it became very clear to me that if we are going to get to the future that we want to see, whether it's with military AI and robotics or whether it's with civilian applications, we can't just hope that the currents of change take us like a canoe on a river to a good place. We're going to have to get sophisticated enough that we can articulate what we want in the future and be able to demand that we get it, right? And if we don't even know what it is or what name to put on it, it's going to make it really hard for us to paddle our canoe to get to where we want to go and not just where the currents are taking us. So one of the reasons I wrote this book for everyone, and it's not a geeky book for for inside the Pentagon folks. I do like it when folks, somebody recently, a defense industry CEO was saying, "Oh, I've read your book 2.5 times." So I love it when that happens. But much more important to me is, for instance, we also had an 80-year-old grandmother, had no defense-related background at all, was just quoting back sections of the book to me. They thought, "Oh, it was so cool. Oh, I love the way you said this." And so, the key thing is that I wrote Beast in the Machine Beast for everybody, because this is not just affecting us. It's going to affect the shape of the world, the shape of the global map, the way our daily lives and our daily security, the way our sense of security and safety may be completely upended, because this is not a change that's just affecting the U.S. military, right? This is affecting the entire globe and the great democratization of, let's say, lethality, right? That's provided by these. You can see almost every day. Most recently in Haiti, right? We have mercenary or private military companies helping the Haitian government inflict drone strikes on internal enemies, right? And so, these are coming back to us, and what we see overseas, is going to be affecting all of us at home pretty soon. It helps us an awful lot to all understand the trends and being able to get ahead of those. And I can guarantee it that anyone who reads Beast in the Machine, because I've been in those rooms, I know, will know more than 80% of the people in the Pentagon who are talking about it.
George, can I ask you a question right there? Absolutely fascinating. It's the first thing in the Bible. I just got back from a conference where a rather provocative statement, I think, just sort of to rattle the crowd, was made. The only thing worse than a killer drone, an autonomous killing machine, is the children of the drone. Sort of underscoring the current debate, obviously, what's happening with projects red lines, right? But national mass surveillance and the proliferation of autonomous killing machines. What's your take on that?
So this is a great opportunity for me to plug the panel that Bob Underwood put together at noon today, and that we're going to be talking about exactly this for an hour, myself and several other expert panelists on this topic.
Yeah.
But I can lead in.
Is it a national? Is it incumbent upon our frontier labs? Right? Is it like a Los Alamos moment? That's sort of what I'm asking myself. Right? Do we have a national security obligation, right, to ensure that our AI is better than Chinese Russian AI?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is an intent, right? But an intent does not necessarily mean that you're going to get there first.
And it's not the law.
Right, and one of the challenges we have right now is we have very simplistic thinking about these kind of things. We'll talk about stuff like, oh, killer robots, all right? But that means, can you be more specific? I mean, we've had, like I say, robots working in war, even with simple technology, for now close to onto 100 years, right? The very first robotic weapon, if you will, was Tesla's Tele-Automaton in 1898, when he said that it was the very first mobile robot, and he said, by far its most important impact is going to be in the area of warfare and armaments. And so the idea of military robots is as old as robots. But that's how long we've been thinking about this. But still, the idea of what happens when we get here has not gotten anywhere near as much thought as it needs to be. So one of the things I like to point out is fully autonomous weapons are impossible. Now, why is that? Because what is a weapon? A weapon is a tool that does the will of its wielder. It's a destructive thing that a wielder does to act their will upon something. A better weapon is one that does that more powerfully and more certainly, right? An autonomous weapon, that is to say, any dangerous thing that is acting on its own and not subject to the will of a wielder, is not a weapon. It is just a hazard. And a hazard loosed into the battlefield is something we've already experienced before. Poison gas, biological weapons, and so forth. The reason we don't have those things is partly because they were inhumane, but more importantly, they were bad weapons. The U.S. military was the first in line to say, let's get rid of these. They don't deliver success in our wars. All they do is increase the total level of misery for everyone, and they're mostly useful as terror weapons against undefended civilians, not against military forces. So we don't need to introduce more totally autonomous weapons that are like clouds of poison gas going around and wreaking havoc. And happily, that's not where our military is trying to head anyway. But if we are not careful and just jump at the latest shiny toy in terms of this robotic system or AI system will allow you to reduce your manning by 90% and not think about it, we could end up revisiting some of the same horrors that we've had in the past century, and this time in high definition.
So Cognitive Kin is really, it's not a technical book, right? It's a book that covers a lot of ground on how AI or agentic AI going to impact our lives and work in many different ways. So I'll tell you a story which kind of triggered my understanding how things will change. So I'm in software, I'm passionate about software, I used to write code, my pride was that I know how to write good code, right? So then during summer I had an intern, he had never coded, in econ major, and I showed him the tools that was available a year back, and they're much better now. And in a week he created, in essence, to give you context, he created an interview training app. He could give it the job description, he could give it his resume, it would generate questions, ask him with voice questions, he would answer back to emulate an interview, and it would create an assessment. He had never coded, created it in a week, which would 2 years ago take an engineering team of 5, maybe 6 months, and may at that point not even be possible, right? So for me, that seeing that triggered thoughts in many directions, right? So one is that we are democratizing creating products. A lot of things are software products today. Everything is software products a lot of time, right? So we are democratizing that. So anyone now can become an entrepreneur from that perspective, right? So that means that execution from building software is cheap. It's the novelty of the idea that counts. So how are you going to think different? What are you going to create, right? But it also is an existential challenge, because if that would have happened when I was passionate about software and I've seen this in engineers, the pride is, my professional pride is that I create output, I know how to code. When AI steps in and can replicate and do that much better, what is my role? What is my value? And that's going to happen across the board. So think about software just as an example. So the book is really about helping people understand how things are changing to help them position themselves. So we're going to become more of directing outcomes than creating output. So you have to redefine your value, because if my old value is that I'm creating code, that's my value. It has to be repositioned to I'm directing AI and I use my knowledge to create outcomes, right? And I lost my thread. Sorry.
Yeah, how do people who sort of we've got, and I see this in our company, right? We've got junior engineers, right?
Yeah.
Who are joining us. And, to me, this is heartbreaking, right? This is sort of a challenge to all the youngsters. They have whiplash, right? So on Monday you tell them you're obsolete, right? On Wednesday you tell them, oh, with AI you can do 10x productivity. On Friday, STEM, no STEM, what are you going to do, right? And to me, I think we're seeing this, having that sort of first rung of the career ladder in organizations, right? Where you have, junior folks, right? As Jan said, pride and ownership. I want to be like the senior engineer. And after
That, we're offloading various things and is that diminishing us? The reality is that we are becoming cyborgs. And that's functional because, we're dependent. For instance, one of the questions that I have is, if you had to choose one or the other to permanently give up either your phone and access to computers and all of your electronic gear, or your left hand or your non-dominant hand amputated and you lose it for the rest of your life, STEM students, 95% would give up their hand. Okay, we are already, the envelope of who we are is expanded, and I think that you're being unrealistic if you look at the trajectory of what's going on. There will be autonomous decision making that's going to occur, and because it's much more rapid. It has to be more rapid and only loosely connected to our individual goals. And I think that the idea that, oh, junior level is getting stripped away, all information work is getting displaced. And the expert class, of which we all sort of are a part in some way, is getting dethroned. There's, you go and interact with Claude or ChatGPT for an afternoon, and you become a pseudo-expert in just about anything you want. And so the noosphere, all of the value and all of the information and everything, it's coming at us like a fire hose. And it's just changing in very deep ways when you look at the trajectory of where things are going. That's all I wanted.
Awesome. Just when you said expert class, are you worried about a permanent underclass development, right? Those are the people who will atrophy very quickly, because guess what? You know, remember why it's called GPT, right? Generative pre-trained transformer, right? So it's been trained in our corpus of knowledge. It's still non-deterministic, but it makes us experts, as you said, to varying degrees. The people who don't exercise critical thinking or creativity or business acumen, right? Are those the ones who are using it under the illusion, sort of Kruger-Dunning effect, right? That they may know more, right, than they actually do. And you know, are we going to be building mental gyms?
I think there's going to be nothing that humans are going to be able to do within about 20 years, within a generation, in terms of economically valuable activity that will not be done better by computers. And that we need, when we look at who we are and what our value is and what meaning and purpose is, it's not going to be in what we create. It's going to be in our relationships and our interactions. And that's going to be a huge thing, because for the last 100 years or more, we've seen our value in terms of what we're able to do for work and that sort of a thing. So to me, it's a profound change.
But it's synthetic. So let me hand back to the reality. And Scott, I mean, I think what we have is really cool.
No pressure. I'm speaking on behalf of reality.
Yeah. Dichotomy going over here. Like, this is not that I use Claude very actively, but I think there's a great value in us three authors who are talking about humans. In comparison, not a value like vitality value, but in comparison of you three that are talking about science and technology. And they're literally in front of our eyes becoming one. And so the value is in both. This is not a binary choice. We keep on talking about it. You're going to be dumb if you don't use AI. No. You can be good at AI and be an authentic human at the same time. And so I want to cue that up.
If one quick.
Yeah. I gotta give Scott time.
I do want to finish up, but I agree with you. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a matter of finding. But the thing is that what I see is there's people who deny AI at this point. That it got my job. They are going to lag behind. Meaning that's not the right.
Well, yes,
approach.
that's our job.
Yeah, but. So in that sense, if you're denying it, right, you're in that sense, I use it as a tool, you're going to be behind. To Christoph's point, if you outsource your brain to AI, you're going to become the tool, right? So you have to treat it as a cognitive kin, you have to treat it as a colleague.
That's a sweet spot.
Because if you don't do that, it doesn't matter what you feel. Reality is that, to your point, society is going to go there, right? So you need to actually start to treat it as a colleague with boundaries, delegation. So neither is it a tool, neither do you want to become a tool, right? You need to find a relationship.
Got it. Scott. Where do you go along?
I'm going to read every one of these books immediately. What do you want to do later? We can have I'll tell you what's coming up for me in this moment. I was with somebody yesterday who's an author and a speaker, and he used this phrase, the best things in life don't scale. The best things in life don't scale. A hug, a connection, a human moment, And that really meant something to me because when I wrote my book, I don't know about all of you, mine came out at the end of 22 before AI. So every semicolon in this book was written by me and labored over by me. And I wanted it to affect the person who was reading it. And it's not to say that AI doesn't help, doesn't add scholarship, doesn't ask great questions, doesn't have great idea generation, all of those things are true. I think in my work, I am so passionate about what is the human element in everything that we do that undergirds who we are as humans. And I had a mindset shift when I was writing this, and the mindset shift was this. Everything great in life, everything that we value in life, started with a moment of fear, which I know is semi-provocative. But here's how I think of it. The relationships that we love and value all began with a potential of rejection. The ideas that we brought into the world in our businesses, our careers, all had the potential of failing. And maybe did fail over and over again until they didn't. Everything that we have done that brings us pride and passion as humans had an element of fear and uncertainty at the beginning. But we overcame it. And to me, that's why, and I'm putting in a slight little pitch for my keynote today, I think courage is the most essential human virtue. I think all other virtues are activated by courage. And I think that at the end of the day, learning the skills, which has been my job in life, what does it really mean to be more courageous? As a warrior, as a dad, as a passionate lover of life, as someone in service, what does it mean to be more courageous, and what are the skills that I can learn, both from philosophy and practice, that make me a more courageous human? So my goal in the book was to create a roadmap through that. What does it look like? Like literally, what does it look like to build a courage muscle? Because all the things that we love and value in life are energized by that instinct.
Scott, trained to be more courageous. That's the courage. Is it innate? Is it something that I can be better, more courageous?
Yes, I think the greatest, and I want to make sure everybody has time. The topic of my talk today is microdosing courage. And I use that title very intentionally because we can learn to be more courageous. It is done in small actions. I'll talk to you about a 3-step process by which we actually encode those actions into our psyche, into the confidence that we all have to do courageous things. And then there's the whole aspect of sharing courage. Bob, I was mentioning to Bob earlier this morning, there is a contagious aspect to courage. Just like you've maybe seen the contagious aspect of happiness, Nicholas Christakis and others who did research on it, that when someone in your family or your life or you become more courageous, it inspires people around you to be more courageous. I can only imagine from a military perspective how this propagates. It is, to me, this generative force that we all have access to in every moment, in every choice we make. We're all going to leave this room and we have choices all day long. What does it mean to make the brave choice every single time?
Well, I guess we're talking about AI now. Yes. I know that we're short on time, so I will say that Scott, what time is your keynote today?
At 5.
5 o'clock. I have a keynote tomorrow at noon about this exact thing. When I speak to leaders about innovation and specifically about AI, we have trained ourselves as human beings for evolutionary reasons and for reasons that we can see play out in front of us, whether it's in person or in business or on social media, to be binary thinkers. And that's something that's really hard to train ourselves out of. It has to be intentional. But this moment calls for and both thinking. Like we've discussed, AI is not going anywhere. Also, it's important to interrogate who is perpetuating the seeds and growing the seeds of fear. And who is telling us that everybody's going to lose their jobs? Who benefits from that narrative? And how can we shift the narrative within ourselves, and not in an esoteric way, in a real systemized way where we are retraining our brains and retraining the habits and the cognitive habits and the emotional habits that we have to not just survive and get through and fit into this era, but to thrive and belong in this new age that we are entering into. So come to my keynote tomorrow over there at noon.
One more? I got more?
I think that's the challenge that we're heading towards, is there is a transformation going on, and the two work together. I think AI in this transitional moment is going to enable us to be fully human in ways that we really need that help. So it's really great what you two are saying, and interesting stuff.
Well, it's transformation for sure, and cognitive kin, if you take anything away from it, it's a partnership you form with an artificial mind, right? So, I love what you said about microdosing courage. I'm definitely gonna, hopefully just get more of that. Where can I buy more of that? Where can I get more of that, right? I think we all need to be more courageous in everything that we do. Love your story about personal cognitive transformation, and at the end of the day, this is the one thing, it's charting a very courageous partnership course, thinking with thinking things, and don't let this atrophy your cognitive skills, right? Don't let this erode your confidence. Don't let this change who we are as humans. It's a very deeply humanistic story at the end of the day, but it's a partnership, it's a transformation. And it's interesting, Jan, this book really is about courage, right? What happens when you work with artificial minds that are just so much better, right? Or from a morpher perspective, right? So more structured and powerful in many ways, and in other ways, a lot more feeble than you are, right? So it's leaning into what makes humans humans, and getting the most out of both, parts of the equation. It's a transformation and a journey we all want to take with a lot of courage.
Awesome.
Thank you, great to be here.